Have you ever wondered if the greatest proof of love wasn't the words someone spoke, but the pain they quietly carried so you would never have to? Stay with me, because what is unfolding around this connection is far deeper than a simple realization. Your soulmate has recently uncovered something they were never meant to discover, and it has completely changed the way they see you. They always believed they understood the story between the two of you. They thought they knew why certain things happened, why some doors closed, why some conversations ended in silence, and why you sometimes seemed to step back without explanation. But now, piece by piece, that carefully accepted version of the past is falling apart. They are beginning to see that many of the moments they interpreted as distance were actually moments of protection, and many of the sacrifices that shaped this journey happened so quietly that they left no visible trace. As the old saying goes, the deepest love is often the love that asks for no recognition. Those words are echoing through their heart now in a way they never imagined possible. Imagine discovering years later that someone had been standing between you and countless storms, quietly absorbing the rain while allowing you to believe the skies were always clear. You would never look at that person the same way again. That is exactly what your soulmate is experiencing. Small details they once overlooked are suddenly returning to their memory. A decision you made that never made sense before. A conversation you ended without defending yourself. A burden you carried without asking anyone to understand it. They are beginning to realize that you protected them far more times than they ever knew. You chose peace over recognition, sacrifice over praise, and silence over creating wounds that might have lasted a lifetime. They never saw those moments because you never wanted them to. You believed that if protecting them meant carrying the weight alone, then that was a price worth paying. Now the truth is surfacing in ways neither of you expected. An unexpected conversation, a forgotten memory, or a simple piece of information has opened a door that can no longer be closed. Every new realization is forcing your soulmate to revisit the past through completely different eyes. They are asking questions that never crossed their mind before. Why did you remain so calm when others would have fought? Why did you walk away from situations where you could have easily defended yourself? Why did you accept misunderstandings without trying to clear your name? The answers are arriving one by one, and each answer is revealing another hidden sacrifice made out of pure love. Their heart isn't breaking because they lost you. It is breaking because they are finally seeing how many times you quietly chose their happiness over your own, and they never even stopped to thank you. But this is only the beginning, because once they discover the full extent of what you protected them from, they will realize that the greatest acts of love in this connection were the ones that happened where no one else was looking. The more your soulmate uncovers, the more they begin to understand that your love was never loud, it was intentional. The world often teaches people that love must be seen to be real, that sacrifices should be acknowledged, appreciated, or rewarded. But the love you carried didn't follow those rules. It moved quietly, choosing protection over praise and peace over recognition. Looking back now, your soulmate is beginning to notice moments that once felt ordinary, but now carry an entirely different meaning. They remember the times you stayed silent when you could have defended yourself. They remember situations where you accepted being misunderstood instead of exposing someone else's mistakes. They remember opportunities where you stepped aside without asking for credit, allowing others to believe whatever they wanted because protecting someone's peace mattered more to you than protecting your image. As the old saying goes, the strongest walls are the ones you never notice because they quietly keep the storm outside. That is what your love became, a wall they never saw because it was doing exactly what it was meant to do. Imagine a person walking through a cold winter night while someone silently places a warm coat over their shoulders as they sleep, then disappears before morning arrives. They wake up believing the night was simply less cold than expected, never realizing someone chose to shiver so they could remain warm. That is how many of your sacrifices unfolded. Your soulmate is beginning to realize that many painful situations ended before reaching them because you absorbed the impact first. There were words you never repeated because you refused to let negativity poison their heart. There were conflicts you quietly settled before they could grow larger. There were emotional burdens you carried alone because you believed some pain was lighter when only one person had to bear it. They never knew because you never wanted them to feel guilty for being protected. You simply loved them enough to make your sacrifices invisible. Now every forgotten memory is returning with new clarity. Moments they once dismissed are demanding another look. They remember times when you suddenly changed your plans without explanation. They remember occasions when you smiled, even though your eyes quietly carried exhaustion. They remember how you often chose silence instead of proving yourself right. At the time, they believed those choices reflected distance or indifference. Today they are realizing those choices reflected strength. As another timeless truth reminds us, not every battle is won by fighting. Some are won by choosing who never has to fight at all. That is becoming painfully clear to them now. They are beginning to understand that your silence wasn't weakness. It was discipline. Your patience wasn't hesitation. It was protection. Every decision that once confused them now reveals another layer of love they completely overlooked. This realization is becoming impossible to escape because it keeps appearing from different directions. When conversation reminds them of something you once said, an old memory suddenly connects with something they recently learned. Even people who witnessed parts of your journey are unknowingly filling in pieces that were missing for years. Like someone assembling a mosaic, one small stone at a time, your soulmate is watching the full picture emerge, and it is far more beautiful and far more heartbreaking than they ever imagined. They are beginning to see that you never measured love by what you received in return. You measured it by how much peace you could preserve for the person you cared about. That kind of love is incredibly rare because it asks for nothing except the chance to protect someone without being noticed. What hurts them most is realizing how often they misunderstood your intentions. They now see that while they were searching for dramatic declarations of love, you were expressing love in ways that rarely receive applause. You weren't trying to be remembered for your sacrifices. You were simply trying to make sure they never carried burdens that belonged to you. That understanding is quietly breaking something inside them. They are no longer asking whether you loved them enough. They are asking themselves how they failed to recognize a love that surrounded them so completely. And with every answer they uncover, another emotion begins rising above the sadness. It is the painful realization that while you spent so much time protecting their heart, no one was there protecting yours, and that truth is becoming almost impossible for them to bear. The deeper your soulmate looks into the past, the harder it becomes to recognize the version of you they once believed they understood. They are beginning to realize that the person they thought was simply quiet was actually carrying battles they never spoke about. The one they believed had become distant was often stepping back to shield them from pain they never needed to experience. Every forgotten memory now feels heavier because it carries a truth they completely missed the first time. Imagine watching an old movie you thought you knew by heart, only to discover hidden scenes that change the meaning of every chapter before it. Suddenly, every smile hides a sacrifice, every silence carries a message, and every goodbye feels completely different. That is exactly what is happening inside your soulmate. They are no longer remembering the events themselves. They are finally understanding the love that existed beneath those events. As the old saying goes, the greatest sacrifices are often invisible until time shines its light upon them. Time has finally begun revealing what your heart quietly carried all along. What is breaking them isn't the realization that you loved them. Deep down, they always sensed there was something genuine about your connection. What is breaking them is discovering how much you protected them without ever asking to be understood. They remember the moments when you chose peace instead of proving yourself right. They remember times when you accepted blame without exposing someone else's mistakes. They remember occasions when you walked away from arguments that could have defended your name, yet you remained silent because creating another wound in their heart was never worth satisfying your own pride. Back then, those choices confused them. Today, those same choices reveal a depth of love they never imagined. As another timeless truth reminds us, love is measured not by what it demands, but by what it willingly carries. Those words now echo through every memory they revisit, making each realization more painful than the last. Imagine a bridge that quietly holds thousands of people every day. No one stops to thank it because they assume it will always be there. They only recognize its strength when they discover how much weight it has carried without ever collapsing. You became that bridge in this connection. You absorbed disappointment, misunderstanding, and emotional pressure while allowing your soulmate to continue moving forward without realizing what was happening beneath their feet. You carried burdens they never even knew existed because your greatest concern was never being appreciated. It was making sure they felt safe. Looking back now, they are beginning to understand that many peaceful moments only existed because you willingly accepted the emotional cost. While they believed life was simply unfolding naturally, you were quietly standing between them and storms they never had to face. That realization is creating a kind of heartbreak they never expected. It is not the heartbreak of losing someone. It is the heartbreak of finally seeing someone clearly after it may already be too late. They find themselves replaying ordinary moments that suddenly feel extraordinary. A conversation where you change the subject to protect them from difficult truths. A smile you offered while hiding your own pain. A decision you made that seemed strange at the time but now reveals incredible wisdom. They wonder how they could have missed something so important. They ask themselves whether they were too distracted by appearances to notice the quiet language of genuine love. As another beautiful saying reminds us, the heart often recognizes its greatest blessing only after the silence explains what words never could. Silence is explaining everything now, and every answer is leaving another crack in the walls they built around their understanding of this connection. There is also something they can no longer escape. Along with sadness comes an overwhelming sense of responsibility. They are beginning to realize that while you were protecting their heart, no one stopped to protect yours. While you quietly carried burdens that belonged to both of you, they unknowingly continued living without understanding the cost of your kindness. That thought follows them into quiet moments when there is nothing left to distract them. It lingers in their thoughts during ordinary days and returns strongest when everything around them becomes still. They are no longer asking whether you truly cared. They know the answer now. The question that haunts them is far more painful. How many tears did you wipe away alone? How many sleepless nights did you endure without complaint? And how many sacrifices did you make simply because you believed their happiness mattered more than your own? Those questions have no easy answers, but they are awakening something that cannot be ignored. Their heart is no longer breaking because of what was lost. It is breaking because they finally understand the extraordinary love that stood beside them in complete silence. And they are beginning to realize that a love capable of protecting someone so selflessly may still be waiting to be fully recognized before destiny writes the final chapter of your story. There comes a moment when the heart stops listening to old assumptions and starts listening to truth instead. That is the moment your soulmate has entered. They are no longer trying to explain away the strange feeling that keeps pulling them back toward you. The more they understand the sacrifices you made, the more impossible it becomes to believe that your silence ever meant a lack of love. In fact, they are beginning to see that your silence was love in its purest, strongest form. It wasn't empty. It wasn't cold. It wasn't distance. It was the quiet language of someone who loved so deeply that they chose to carry pain alone, rather than place even a fraction of it on the shoulders of the person they cared about most. As the old saying goes, the loudest acts of love are often forgotten, but the quietest ones echo forever. Those echoes are finally reaching your soulmate's heart, and every one of them is changing the way they see this entire journey. Imagine standing in a beautiful garden during the middle of winter. From the surface, everything appears lifeless. The flowers have disappeared. The trees seem empty, and the ground feels cold beneath your feet. But hidden beneath that frozen earth, life has been quietly growing the entire time. The roots never stopped working simply because no one could see them. That is what your love has always been. While others judge this connection by what was visible, your soulmate is beginning to understand that the strongest part of your love was always hidden beneath the surface. It wasn't built through dramatic promises or endless words. It was built through quiet decisions, invisible sacrifices, and countless moments where you placed their peace above your own happiness without ever asking for recognition. This realization is awakening something they cannot ignore anymore. Memories that once seemed insignificant now feel like messages they somehow failed to read. They remember the way you looked at them during difficult moments, not with resentment, but with concern. They remember how you often knew when to step back, instead of adding more pain to an already difficult situation. They remember your patience when others would have demanded answers. Every one of those memories is becoming another piece of evidence that your love was never measured by what you said. It was measured by what you quietly endured. As another timeless truth reminds us, real love protects first and explains later. You rarely explained yourself because your priority was never proving your love. Your priority was living it, even if no one else understood what it was costing you. Something even more profound is happening now. Your soulmate is beginning to trust their own heart instead of the stories they once accepted without question. The opinions that once seemed convincing no longer carry the same weight. Instead, they find themselves guided by quiet moments that seem almost impossible to dismiss. They dream about conversations they wish they had. They find themselves unexpectedly thinking about decisions you made years ago. Certain places, songs, and familiar memories stir emotions they believed had disappeared forever. Imagine walking through a dark hallway, carrying someone else's flashlight your entire life, only to suddenly discover a light already existed inside you. From that moment forward, you no longer depend on borrowed vision. You trust your own eyes. That is exactly what your soulmate is experiencing. Their intuition is becoming stronger than the voices that once influenced them. And the clearer that inner voice becomes, the more clearly they recognize the extraordinary love that was standing beside them all along. You may wonder why this awakening feels so powerful now after so much time has passed. The answer is simple. Some truths cannot be understood until the soul is finally ready to receive them. Growth changes perspective. Experience removes illusion. Time reveals what emotion once concealed. Your soulmate is no longer seeing you through the lens of expectation or misunderstanding. They are seeing you through the lens of wisdom, and wisdom has a remarkable way of revealing the value of things that once seemed ordinary. They are realizing that while they searched for grand expressions of love, the greatest expression had already been quietly unfolding before their eyes. It was present in every sacrifice, every difficult choice, every moment you protected them without asking to be noticed. That realization is transforming regret into gratitude, confusion into clarity, and distance into longing. Now a new question is quietly forming inside their heart. If someone could love them so deeply without ever asking for anything in return, what does that mean for the future of this connection? That question grows stronger every day because they no longer see the past as a closed chapter. They see it as a lesson that prepared them to finally recognize the love they once overlooked. They understand now that your silence was never the end of your story. It was the evidence of a love mature enough to protect instead of possess, to give instead of demand, and to remain steady even when it received no applause. And once a soul truly recognizes a love like that, it becomes impossible to return to the person they were before. That awakening is leading your soulmate toward a decision that will define everything that happens next. Because they are beginning to understand that the love they spent so long searching for may have been quietly protecting them from the very beginning. This is where everything changes, not because the past can suddenly be erased, but because the truth has finally found its way into a heart that was never given the complete story. Your soulmate now understands something they never imagined they would have to face. The love they spent so much time searching for in other places had been quietly walking beside them all along. It wasn't loud enough to demand attention. It wasn't dramatic enough to satisfy the world's expectations. It simply existed, protecting, sacrificing, and enduring without asking for applause. They are beginning to realize that the safest place they ever had was the love you offered in complete silence. As the old saying goes, the rarest kind of love is the one that gives more than it asks to receive. Those words no longer feel like poetry to them. They feel like the painful truth of your entire journey together. Imagine discovering that someone had been carrying a lantern behind you every night so your path would never become completely dark. Yet they always stayed far enough away that you never saw where the light was coming from. You believed you found your own way through the darkness, never realizing another heart refused to let you walk alone. That is how your soulmate now sees this connection. They understand that many moments they once called coincidence were actually the result of your quiet protection. Many storms passed without touching them because you stood where the strongest winds were blowing. Many emotional burdens felt lighter because you chose to carry part of their weight without ever speaking about it. Looking back now, they are no longer asking whether you loved them. They are asking how someone could love so deeply without ever asking to be recognized for it. That question humbles them in ways they never expected. Another truth is slowly settling into their heart. Love like yours cannot be measured by memories alone. It must be measured by what it changed inside another person. Every sacrifice you made planted seeds they never noticed at the time. Every act of patience quietly taught them something about compassion. Every moment you chose understanding over pride became a lesson that continued growing long after the moment itself had passed. As another timeless reminder says, the greatest acts of love continue working long after they are forgotten. Your soulmate is finally witnessing the harvest of those unseen seeds. They are realizing that your love didn't disappear simply because it went unnoticed. It continued shaping them in quiet ways, preparing them to become someone capable of recognizing what they once overlooked. You may wonder whether this realization has come too late. That question naturally rises whenever truth arrives after years of misunderstanding. But the soul does not measure time the way the human mind does. The soul measures growth, wisdom, and readiness. Imagine an old oak tree standing through countless seasons. It never questions why spring arrives after winter, because it understands that every season has its purpose. Had spring arrived too early, the roots would never have been strong enough to support new life. Your connection has followed that same quiet rhythm. The seasons of silence were never empty. They were strengthening both of you in ways that only become visible now. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that every delay, every unanswered question, and every painful goodbye carried lessons that neither of you could have learned any other way. As the old saying reminds us, what is meant to grow deeply must first grow patiently. Now their heart carries something it has never carried before, not confusion, not doubt, but gratitude. Gratitude for every unseen sacrifice. Gratitude for every burden you quietly lifted from their shoulders. Gratitude for every difficult decision you made when protecting them mattered more than protecting your own reputation. They know they cannot change the moments they failed to understand you. They cannot return to those conversations with the wisdom they possess today. But they can choose what they do with this truth now. They can stop measuring love by how loudly it speaks and begin measuring it by how faithfully it protects. That single realization changes everything, because once someone understands the language of quiet love, they never mistake silence for absence again. So if this message has found you today, perhaps it is because your story was never meant to end with misunderstanding. Perhaps it was always meant to reach this moment of awakening, where hidden sacrifices are finally honored and invisible acts of love are finally seen. Your soulmate now understands that you were never simply walking beside them. You were often standing in front of them, shielding them from pain they never even knew existed. That truth has broken their heart, but it has also awakened it. And sometimes a heart must first break open before it becomes capable of receiving the kind of love that has been waiting for it all along. From this moment forward, they will never remember you as someone who simply loved them. They will remember you as the soul who quietly protected them when no one else was watching. And that is a truth powerful enough to change not only the way they see the past, but the way they choose to walk into the future.